Okay, hello everybody, I'm John Lincoln and welcome to another Ignite Visibility University. Today we're talking about something that's relatively new. It's only been out for a couple years and it's really only been recommended very, very recently. And that is AMP, the Accelerated Mobile Page Project. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So first things first, what is AMP? Well, AMP is really a way to make your mobile pages accelerated or faster. And it was originally created for publishers to be able to more quickly deliver information to their readers. So it's been kind of a mix between publishers wanting to have faster pages and then technology companies wanting to be able to take that news and those blog posts and all that great information from publishers and display it more quickly. So really the main thing that it does is it allows pages to load faster and makes it easier for them to explore as well. And if you've ever seen an AMP page, you'll see that it's a very, very simple looking page, about the most basic page that you're going to see on a mobile device. So some of the main benefits of AMP are, of course, faster pages, higher conversion rates, mostly due to the page speed. So as you may know, if a page takes over a second to load, that usually correlates to about a 7% decrease in conversion rates, right? And right now the entire web is plagued with slow loading web pages. We get clients in that have pages that take 8-9 seconds to load in some cases. Now you can always go ahead and check this by going into Google Analytics and looking at your page speed report. That's a great place to see what are your fastest loading pages and your slowest loading pages and go there and diagnose that. But basically, AMP essentially ensures that your pages are going to load faster. If they load faster, you're probably going to have lower bounce rates and higher conversion rates, which are great user metrics. Also, it allows you to have a larger distribution. So if this is your AMP page right here, by putting it in AMP, that makes it in a format that's much more easily digestible by third-party, right? Third-party websites, social media sites, and applications, right? So another website or social media site or an app can take this information from your website and they can take it and they can display it on their website, their app, or their social media site because it's in this easily digestible format. You may have seen that Google for a while, they had a carousel at the top of Google that showed pages that were only AMP ready or accelerated mobile pages. Since then, they've now taken AMP results and they've put them into the normal search results, but in many cases, they're showing AMP next to them, right? A little call out that shows that they're AMP ready and that they're fast. So that's another benefit of it. But really, the main goal of the entire thing, right, is to create a more common technical platform for mobile. Right now, there's so many different ways to do mobile. You've got applications, you've got mobile subdomains, you've got this thing called very HTTP header where it kind of changes it depending on, how the browser detects it. You've got responsive design. AMP is a way that all people can display really fast web pages, and it works with all of these technologies if you code it up correctly. Okay, so there's a lot of benefits to AMP, but there's also some cons, and I want to make sure that you're well aware of this before you kind of go diving into it. Okay, so first, we talked about this, but third parties can crawl, index, and display content, right? So it's a lot like the Google Knowledge Graph in that way. So basically, if you've ever seen the knowledge graph, it's kind of on the right-hand side of the page. It takes information, in some cases, from other websites and displays it. Now, if you own a website, you don't get that click, right? You don't get that traffic. That can also happen with AMP. So while you might get a lot of impressions, you're not getting a lot of people coming through to your website, which to me is frustrating because I want everybody to land on my site so that I can capture an email address. I can have a micro or a macro conversion, of course, right? Which leads us to the idea that it could hurt your conversion rates, right? So AMP pages are very dumbed down. They're very basic. It's hard to put the extra design features in there that can result in high conversions, right? And also, if they're not on your website, if they're just viewing this briefly on another site that it's been distributed to, it's going to be hard to get that conversion. Okay, there's very, very large technical requirements. So that's another thing. So it's basically like building another version of your website. And I'm going to get into all that in a moment, but it's very much like building another version of your website. So that's a big deal, right? You have to maintain it. You have to make sure it's always ready. Now, depending on what content management system you're on, it can be much, much easier. It can be just as simple as clicking a button and making sure nothing's broken. So it's always dependent on the framework of your site, the technology. But if it's a proprietary technology, it can be very tough to do this. There's also very limited design abilities. It's very new. Will it continue? That's another thing to think about. So it's brand new. Yeah, it's open source. There's a lot of people around it. It seems like it's going to take off. And Google, right, one of the most dominant websites online, is pushing it harder than anybody. So it'll probably stay around at this point, but it could kind of be taken back as well. And then the last thing that's kind of important is if you have a misconfiguration error and it's not set up properly, right now in Google, it's going to say that your AMP page is not set up right for everybody to see, right? Which is always kind of I don't know why Google would do that, but they decided that was a good idea. We can talk to them about that. Okay, so now we've kind of talked about what it is, the main benefits, and some of the cons, which of course are important. But another thing to know is what types of content are good for AMP? Well, really, it came out and it was really only supposed to be for news, blog posts, right? Content, things that people wanted to kind of read and digest. And they left it at that. But what's changed is over the last couple weeks, they've started coming out and saying, well, now we can do AMP for e-commerce. Why shouldn't we? We figured it out, right? So now they have technical ways so that you can set up a product page, a category page, right? They have specific types of AMP code that allows you to create the functionality that you would generally like to see within those types of user experiences on those websites. I've actually taken a look at it. Doesn't look bad, doesn't look great either. It's pretty simple and it's about as basic as it gets. But if it's a very basic site where they're not really looking for anything other than a minimalistic approach, it could be a good thing, right? So now you probably want to know, how can I get started? How can I get started with AMP? Okay, you're skipping the red, you're thinking, I want to do it. So I'm going to tell you that right now. Well, first thing is that keep in mind, not all your pages need to be AMP ready, right? You do not need to have every page. So if you wanted to, you could start with like your home page and then push your blog AMP ready. Maybe do a category page or two, depending on what type of website you have, right? And then you can get into your e-commerce pages, your e-commerce category pages, but if you want to, you could just switch to HTML for your checkout process, right? So depending on your development abilities, who you have in-house, type of CMS you're on, and things like that, you can kind of pick and choose what you want to be AMP ready and what you don't, right? And generally, people will start with their news, their blog area, right? And then they'll get into other areas that they also want to be AMP ready too. Now, before you get going, also check to see if there's a plugin, right? So for WordPress, right, our site, ignitevisibility.com, is on WordPress. I installed AMP in just a matter of minutes, really, right? We put in a plugin, we set up analytics correctly through Yoast. That's the way you do it there. And by doing that, we're able to get tracking in place. It's AMP ready. It's good to go. So if you're on WordPress, really easy. Make sure you use the plugin. And also keep in mind that there's plugins for Magento and Drupal. Drupal has a module. GitHub has a plugin for Drupal. So for these type, very, very simple, right? Almost no reason not to do it, especially for the blog or news section of your site. For the other sections, you want to make sure it's configured correctly. You could run into some of these issues. So you'll want to make sure for sure that you make an annotation inside of analytics when you push this live. You see a drop in conversion rates, any weird traffic things, you're going to want to make sure that you note that, right? And also, if you want to find out any more, you can always go to ampproject.org. That's kind of the main site that tells you everything about it. And if you want to see if your site's AMP ready first, right? Maybe you don't know, maybe you bought the website from somebody, you're not a developer, you're just watching this video and you want to double check. One thing that you can do, which I love about AMP, which is a really easy trick, is you can go to any URL on your site, right? So for example, example.com, and put in /AMP/, and it's going to show you the AMP version of your page, which is really cool. And you can kind of see how it looks and make sure that it's working correctly and everything and all that. So last couple things, I'm going to get into some of the technical tips. Now, there's a lot to know about AMP. Like the technical side it's almost like an entirely new coding language, which makes it almost impossible to describe in one video. But what I want to tell you are the main requirements that you need to know for an AMP page. I don't want to tell you how to build a whole AMP website because there's drop downs that have specific AMP code. There's ways to do all types of stuff, but I will tell you the technical tips that you need to know to validate. So first things first, you need to have doc type HTML inside of your header of your document, right? So it needs to start that way. So exclamation mark doc type HTML. At the top of the page, you need to have HTML and a little AMP sign, or literally AMP. So HTML AMP, so that can validate correctly. You need to have head and body tags, and you need to contain a rel alternate link. So a link, it's literally link rel equals canonical ref equal URL. So you're going to actually be canonically, excuse me, it's not an alternate, but a canonical tag rather. You're going to be canonicalling from the AMP page to another HTML page on your site. So that's a requirement. It's actually the same way that you do that on a mobile subdomain to a desktop site. It's the same type of principle that you're doing with AMP. So same as the mobile subdomain optimization, if you're familiar with that, and perhaps you watched our mobile SEO video, I'd recommend you check that out too. But you're going to put a rel canonical ref that goes to another HTML page on the site. Also need to have your char set UTF-8 encoding tags on the page, right? All that means is you need to have this in there. You also need to have a viewport tag, right? That tells you the size of the page. And then also you need to load in this asynchronous script from the AMP project CDN, right? So basically what this little piece of code does right here is it says, pull in this information from AMP and use this to display my web page. If you want to find out all the technical requirements, and there's a bit more, but these are actually just the main requirements, you can always go to ampproject.org and they'll walk you through it. They've done an amazing job with it, okay? So this is AMP in a nutshell. We're really pushing all of our clients into it. I think it's going to be kind of the main way that people code up sites for mobile specifically as we move into the future. It just started out with news sites, then everybody started putting it on their blog, then they started putting it on their main pages, and now they're even coming out and saying doing it for e-commerce sites and e-commerce category pages, and even in some cases you could even do it through your e-commerce checkout process, although even in the AMP documentation they say themselves that might be kind of difficult. So it's really taken off, and go ahead and take a look at it. Thanks so much for watching this video today. I can't wait to see you for the next one, and have a great day.